All right, we're all set. We're streaming on Zoom. We're ready to go. It's okay. We're good. We're live streaming on Zoom. It is 6:05. This time I'd like to call the January 19th, 2022 meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission to order. The first item of business is public comment, and invite citizens to come forward to discuss anything except what is on the agenda tonight. Please fill out a comment card. Limit your talk to 3 minutes. Please come forward here and online. Anyone on Zoom wishing to speak? No one on Zoom wishing to speak. Okay. Anyone here in attendance wishing to speak? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment portion of this meeting. We'll move on to the next item of business. Consent agenda item will be the minutes of the last meeting. So everyone had a chance to read through the minutes, confirm that they're good. If not, we'll discuss it. If not, I'll take a motion. Oh, in the minutes.
Yeah, so that's something we're working on in the software. For some reason, Carly, the software doesn't like you. I don't know why. And it will not update you as a permanent member. But we are working with the town secretary and the vendor to get that addressed. So the version that the chairman will sign, we'll fix that for that version.
Okay, and I may point out in attendance.
Okay, we got to fix that.
We have Bradford, Burton, Childers, Golder, and Mays, and Hagan. Bradford in attendance as an alternate. Absent is Moss, and absent is Kumar, alternate.
I was actually absent at the last meeting. I thought it listed me as absent.
It does. Yeah. So what's, oh, tonight's meeting? Or what do you?
Was the minutes he just was referring to tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was
Okay.
just taking a roll tonight on the record.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay.
A little bit of confusion there.
You didn't call me name.
Motion. If we're good with the minutes and we have it straightened out, who's was in attendance.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, motion made by Mace.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes, Brad, who voted? All opposed? There are none. Passes 7-0. All right. Now we move on to the next item, public hearing. Public hearing to discuss residential replat.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. This residential replat concerns the 5 residential lots at the southwest corner of Collins Road and Town East. These lots were recently replatted a few months ago to move some property lines among the properties. It's members of the same family that own all of the properties, and so they adjusted some of the property lines between them a few months ago. The applicant is now requesting to adjust the property lines again in order to create a sixth lot for another family member to buy into the properties. This replat does not affect lots 1, 2, and 5. Lot 3, the lot lines would be adjusted just slightly at the rear of the property to square it off a little bit. And then lot 4 is being subdivided to create a sixth lot. And there's a copy of the plat. The proposed lot 4 would be kind of an S-shaped property that would be vacant and have a very restricted buildable area due to kind of the odd size that is being created by carving out lot 6. And then the new lot 6 would be 2 acres, which meets the minimum lot size requirement, and would include a narrow 24-foot strip connecting it to Collins Road. And I'll come back to that in just a second. In talking with the owners, just so you understand what the goal is here for lot 6 is to allow a member of the family to purchase the home that is on what is lot 4 currently. They want to kind of carve out the land around the home and into a lot that complies with as many of the requirements as possible, but wouldn't require that the person buy the entirety of lot 4. So that's why they're creating lot 6. To their credit, they've worked with staff over the last few months to create a lot that complies with as many of the requirements as possible. Originally, it was a much smaller lot that had a number of issues, but they've made it to where it is the lot in its current configuration. And the only issue that there is now that we can't solve is how to access the street from this lot. There is a requirement in the UDO that all lots must front a public street. And then we also say that you cannot have a flag lot. And a flag lot is as the name suggests, because it looks like a flag, it's a lot that meets the width requirements, but it's only connected to the street through a narrow strip. It kind of looks like a pole, and then the property spans out and looks like a flag. So that's the name. And so since the UDO prohibits flag lots, the applicant is requesting a subdivision waiver from that requirement so that they can get this plat approved as they have presented it. The UDO talks about when subdivision waivers should be granted and gives direction that no subdivision waiver should be granted unless there is some sort of special circumstances or unique conditions affecting a property that would warrant there to be some sort of exception made that unless there was that exception made, it would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the land. It also says that a subdivision waiver must be necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right, and that it should be in keeping with the public health and safety and requirements of the town, and then also it can't be due to a financial hardship. So when staff looks at this request in light of the guidance that is given by the UDO or direction that's given by the UDO for when a subdivision waiver should be granted, this seems like a self-imposed hardship. There's nothing in staff's opinion unique or no special circumstances that are inherent to the land that would warrant some sort of exception. And that, other than wanting to buy a smaller portion of the property, there really is no hardship present or anything unique about the property that would warrant an exception. And so staff's recommendation is for a denial of the subdivision waiver and denial of the plat for being comprised of a flag lot. And
So-
Brenda has something to add.
So, I have something to add as well. As I have reviewed, and I just let these guys know right before the meeting, but as I have reviewed the use of the waiver as it's set out in the statute. It says an applicant may request a subdivision waiver of a particular standard or requirement applicable to a plat. When I read that flag lots are prohibited, that's not a standard or requirement. That's a prohibition. And I don't believe as written that the subdivision ordinance allows the waiver process to allow something that's prohibited. I think it clearly allows you to vary a standard that's set out. For example, you've seen waivers for cul-de-sac lengths, right? So that means that cul-de-sacs are permitted, but the length is not supposed to exceed something. And the waiver is to allow it to exceed a standard that's set out. If cul-de-sacs were prohibited, you wouldn't be able to grant a waiver to allow a cul-de-sac. Okay. And I believe that's what this waiver is asking. Section 2.0507D of the subdivision ordinance says flag lots are prohibited. So my legal opinion is that you cannot use a waiver process to seek approval of something that's prohibited. You can use the waiver process to waive some standard or requirement, but not a prohibition. And I involved my partner, one of my law partners, in this conversation as well. And she has reached the same conclusion. So my legal opinion is that you don't have the ability to grant a waiver, and you should, that's another reason to deny the plat.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, the only other thing I'd add is because this is a residential replat, it does require a public hearing. That's kind of unusual for plats. Plats usually don't require public hearings. And the applicant is also here and would like to speak.
Okay, all right. If you would like to speak, please step forward and state your name and address for the record.
Two of the neighbors in question here on the other side of town. And I guess my question is, and I totally understand what our city attorney is saying. If not a waiver, then what? I think you, and I'm all about following the law, what's required, and whatever the town is saying, you know, a nice book, we all know it, live in a nice place. If you look at this property, what we're calling the flag, you know, I don't know the purpose in not having a flag property. I mean, it looks just like a flag, I get that. But what is the purpose in not having a flag? I understand if there was a smaller roadway going to a home, that kind of thing. But if you look at this property, there is a drive, a concrete drive that two cars can pass easily through. When my mom lived there, because this was her property, my mom and dad, and when she passed away, or while she was still living, the fire department had come out there several times just because of her health, and had no problem entering. And also, there's an area that you turn around. That's not an issue. So I would just ask that you look at it as something different than what you would normally think of as a flag property, because it does look different. The other thing is, away for them what? Because, you know, the property's been divvied up between the family members. You know, there's four siblings. The fourth sibling already owns 7 acres on the other side of Collins, so she's not interested in property. So it's just my brother and sister and I, and then Jason, which is my nephew, wanting to live on the property. But if not that, then what? Because we have this beautiful home back there for my mom. So are we not going to be able to have someone live in that house? That doesn't make sense to me either. So I guess really I'm just for information purposes. If not a waiver, then how can we get this resolved so that we have someone that can live in that house?
Well, there's more property that fronts on the road that's a part of that lot today. So the answer would be to sell the lot with the house on it as it exists.
But we are asking, but then we put a burden on one of the other students to actually purchase that home. Difficult also.
I understand what you're saying, but I can only tell you what the option is. My understanding is that it is certainly possible to allow that house and have it occupied on the lot as it exists. Right. And so I'm not sure that there's a justification, even if you could waive it. I don't know that there's a justification for that waiver in the ordinance.
I really would like. I just think, I'm all about doing what makes sense, and I know that's what you're doing, but also what makes sense. It's a big property. And really, and I know we subdivision is. Just take a look at it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
Jason Moore, and I, the son-in-law of Randy and Cindy Martin for the owners, the property.
And you're,
So Brandon said that I found this trip, take it tonight, or request, as approved, of life hanging around. Since, I've been concerned that this is from. So first of all, I fully recognize that your approval of the subdivision waiver. Just recently told us that. I recognize that your approval of this will be the plan. Jefferson granted this waiver, even though the sections. So I appreciate your consideration of our request. But I believe that our case and this piece of property, as mentioned, does have some special circumstances and conditions of the plan you guys to consider. As an aside, I apologize that this wasn't outlined better in our application. I mentioned this to Charles, but we not fully understand what the question, we talked about special circumstances in the application of what that was asking at that time. So we consulted the surveyor, Billy Duckworth, and he correctly advised us to put those special circumstances on the application. But here I'd like to help. And show why I think there's merit to grant the subdivision. Even with the application that was just presented. So on the fourth paragraph, yeah. No, you're good. Yeah, that's better. So in the fourth paragraph of that background information of the agenda item report that the staff provided, it states the access way for the proposed flag lot reduces the width of lot 4 to 137 feet. This is significantly below the 250 feet required. And then I wanted to point out, it says, while the lot does not comply currently, the creation of lot 6 will take lot 4 even further out of compliance. So as the background information says, the width of lot 4, as you look at it without lot 6, is already below that 250-foot requirement. And lot 5 even makes it, I don't know the exact definition of what you would consider a flag lot. And I know in the UDO, it doesn't even define it. It just says it's prohibited. But if you look at lot 4, even without lot 6, that it does create a flag because of lot 5, and that's already something that's existing. So if the provisions of the UDO are already strictly applied, then even the current physical condition of the property would require some kind of waiver. So while I understand that the lot width would be decreasing, the creation of lot 6 does not create an issue that does not currently already exist. So we'd like for y'all to consider that. There is another item of note on the 250-foot minimum lot width that's required as part of the standards for the SF1 zoning district in Sunnyvale. So as you can see on the McGee Trace, none of those properties meet the 250-foot minimum width. And I wanted to look more than just at the McGee Trace. So I did a little research and looked at some of the other properties that are zoned in Sunnyvale SF1. And I looked on the Town East on the north side. As you can see just on the top of that diagram, on the north side, those items or those lots are also zoned SF1. And when I looked at it, the majority of those lots on Town East between Collins and Jobson have a lot width of less than 250 feet. So if you allowed our lot with the current lot width and the proposed lot width, if you allowed that, that would be consistent with the other lots with the SF1 zoning that are in our area. And then also we'd like for you to consider the reasoning that a flag lot would be prohibited. At the end of the third paragraph under the background information that was presented by the staff, it states, while the UDO does not give a specific reason, flag lots are prohibited in most cities because they tend to cause problems between neighbors, and more importantly, because it can be difficult for first responders to locate homes that do not have typical frontage onto a public street. So I understand the issue that some flag lots could cause in some of the cases that you all have to consider, but based on the natural geography and the physical conditions of this particular property that we're talking about, we believe these same issues would not exist. As you know, these properties that we're talking about are on large open lots, and like Patty mentioned, first responders have come out to that area. First responders can see everything they would need to on Collins Road for all of these lots in question. And I think the physical properties and the condition of the general lots that we're talking about are some special circumstances that we'd like for you guys to consider when we're talking about a flag lot and the reasoning that flag lots might be prohibited. The town staff pointed out, and Charles mentioned earlier, that the creation of lot 6 creates an oddly shaped remainder property. So when you look at the proposed replat, we would like for y'all to consider that lot 6 is being created to preserve an already existing home on the property that was built in 1983, long before the majority of homes in the town of Sunnyvale were even around. So this subdivision waiver would allow us to update and preserve that home. So when you look at it, yes, it's oddly shaped, but it's not just chosen as just a random square that then creates that S shape that Charles mentioned, but it's chosen in order to preserve a home on that property. Another requirement of the subdivision waiver is that the granting of the subdivision waiver will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or injurious to other properties in the area. And I believe that our request clearly qualifies in that regard. And then the final requirement for the granting of the subdivision waiver is that it will not have the effect of preventing the orderly subdivision of other lands in the area in accordance with the provisions of the UDO. And in this case, we're not cutting off access to other properties. So I believe we qualify in that regard as well. So I'd like to close by letting you know, as Charles mentioned, that we have worked through several other steps with Charles, with Philip, and the town staff for us to get to this point. So we've worked hard to try to limit the number of variances that you guys must consider. Last spring, there was a lot of conversation about how to make this work. And we originally wanted to just have 1 acre with the house, but then on recommendation of Charles, we made some changes, including increasing the lot size to 2 acres. And in response to an email from my father-in-law, Randy Harden, saying, when Randy said he would still rather us just do 1 acre, Charles responded and told Randy, Mr. Harden, I wanted to make sure that you are aware that the site plan that Billy, who's our surveyor, that Billy submitted complied with all requirements except for the creation of a flag lot. This is when Billy sent him something that had the 2 acres that he suggested that we go to. He said this would have allowed us to forego the Board of Adjustment variance request and simply process a plat while requesting a subdivision waiver to be considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council. And Charles added, it's not possible to reduce the lot size down to 1 acre while complying with all the lot dimension and setback requirements either. So if we did the 1 acre, we'd be likely to go back requesting the following variances at the Board of Adjustment. And then he listed 7 variances that included lot size, lot width, and depth, and setback. So we took his recommendation and changed it and went from the 1 acre to the 2 acres so that we could avoid that. And then after some additional back and forth on emails, Randy responded that we would go with the town's recommendations. And then Charles responded with a recap email that included our surveyors, Mayor George, Susan Guthrie, and several of our family members. And Charles' recap said, based on the other email, it sounds like the intent is to proceed with the most recent lot layout at 2 acres, which is our intent. He said that changes the process and makes it much simpler. Before, we were looking at going to the Board of Adjustment for approval of the variances and then to P&Z and Council for approval of the plat with a subdivision waiver for the flag lot. With this layout, the only issue is the flag lot. We can bypass the Board of Adjustment and proceed straight to platting with the subdivision waiver. So Charles then explained the remaining steps we needed to proceed with, and that brings us to where we are today with our request to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I share all of that with you to show that we have worked hard with the town to try to limit the number of variances requested, and we hope that that will be considered in your decision. And also, I want to point out that Charles mentioned in both emails that I referenced that what we have done changes the process and makes it much simpler, and that we're going to simply process a plat while requesting a subdivision waiver. So frankly, yesterday we were surprised to see on the agenda that the town staff recommended denial. However, it's my understanding from conversation with both Philip and Charles yesterday that a recommendation like that, denying it, is common since the request is not in strict compliance with the ordinance. So we understand staff has an obligation to deny it, but then that's why we're here requesting that you guys consider that we do have some special circumstances. So our request is that you would allow this to be a simple process due to all of the circumstances that I've mentioned. And we believe that the reasons that I've outlined merit the town granting the subdivision waiver. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions?
So the lot 4 that's being proposed still would not have any form of access whatsoever if lot 6 was created.
No.
Lot 4 has access. Lot 4 has 136 feet of frontage. Phil, will you-
Yeah, and the definition of flag lot really is, I just looked up a couple of definitions, that it's the location of a access to a lot through a long driveway. So if you look at lot 4, its access is much greater than a long driveway. Okay, you'll just have to wait a second.
See, this
So
looks like
this
that's what they're
lot right
proposing.
here, oh,
This is
sorry.
what's there.
This lot right here is lot 4. And so this width right here, which I think is about 138 feet, would be the width up here. And then this is lot 6 that they're,
Right, but what I'm asking is, so you would have to then make a driveway some point all the way following the zigzag to
Yes,
get
you
back
would.
there.
You would.
or, so
But right now, because of the existing lot 4, there's a grandfather clause property that was created in the 1980s, built setback with a long driveway, correct? So that's what I'm trying to understand is you're,
So it has a long driveway, but the frontage is much wider than the long driveway. Okay, so people could own 6 acres and not want to be at the front of the lot. And so they have a driveway to the back of the lot. That's different than having a flag pole that's 24 feet in width, which is only long enough to accommodate the driveway. I mean, it's only wide enough to accommodate the driveway. That's a very different situation than lot 4 would be in if lot 6 weren't being proposed.
But is that difference expressly described in our UDO where it compares how 2 different flag lots
No,
should be
but
considered?
we don't, flag lot's not defined in our ordinance. It's a common term in planning, urban planning language.
So it seems like for purposes of this discussion, there's really no difference in a long driveway for 4 versus a long driveway for 6. Is what, because we don't have it expressly described.
No, you don't have to define every single term.
Right.
well, I guess what I'm asking is, if lot 4 is, I know you said would be developed, would be very hard to do. How is the driveway that doesn't exist now,
It does exist.
right? But it has to go around this other lot.
it doesn't necessarily have to do that. So there is a small buildable area up here for a narrow house, but it is theoretically conceivable you could build a house up here and comply with setback requirements.
Although
How do you get to here?
He wants to know how they're going to access lot 4, like where the driveway is going for lot 4.
Lot 4, the driveway could be right here.
And it has to go
But how
through
do
the
you
S
get there?
or around the other side of lot 6.
It depends on where they ultimately decide to build the home. If you go back up here, the other complicating factor is there's a creek back at the back of lot 4. So, you may not be able to build a house back there because of just the geography of that land and the waterway. So I don't know if ultimately they decide to build on lot 4, whether the house would be back at the rear or a small house up in the front of the property.
and to be transparent, I think the purpose of this flag lot is to avoid having to purchase all of lot 4 from a cost standpoint. And that's the reason for the request. Lot 4 with the house on it is an appropriate R1 lot that's somewhat compatible with the rest of the lots that have been platted out of this larger parcel.
Before lot 6 is carved out of it, or as it is now?
Before lot 6 is carved out.
Okay, because before lot 6 is carved out, you have 150 feet. You have a frontage.
Yes.
It's not a flag lot. It's almost, it's got a little panhandle, but it's not a 24-foot
Correct.
passageway to go through there. And lot 4, if you build a house on the back, you'd have to come in to drive and go this way, that way around to get to the back, if you could, depending on the floodplain.
Correct.
So lot 4 really becomes really an odd lot.
But I think they said that lot 4 is currently owned by one of the other individuals who already has a house up on Town East. So my guess is lot 4 is probably not going to be developed. It's probably just going to be held as family land.
But then wouldn't we be creating just somebody, an opportunity somewhere down the road? Someone's going to come either before the Board of Adjustments or back before us trying to figure out a way to make this newly revised Lot 4 work.
As a commission, even though there's no intent to sell lot 4, you have to presume all of these lots can be conveyed.
So, and you said how much frontage is needed for it not to be considered a flag lot? Like, so what I'm asking is, so if this lot 6 was kicked all the way to the south and then butted up directly against lot 5,
I think that would not necessarily be a flag lot.
and then you move this strip of land from lot 4 closer to connecting to lot 5, it's directly on there. And then you could easily do something in the future where then lot 4 is also connected to Collins in a straight shot all the way back past lot 6.
You could.
Or are you saying move lot 5?
Well, I'm saying you move lot 6 towards the south, but it you eliminate this, what looks like a monkey wrench.
I think the problem is the house is already existing there.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a house on 6 and a house on, is that 5 in the corner? There's a
That's
house
the
on
new
5.
house going up there.
Yeah, so the
Yes.
northern boundary of lot 6 that they're proposing has the driveway almost right next to the edge. So
But if,
So where exactly is the home? Is it dead center in lot 6? Is it to like proposed lot 6, the existing home?
in order to make lot 6 not a flag lot, you would make lot 4 a flag lot, or it would be inaccessible from the driveway, highway, or
Right, but so what I'm
Or-
saying is if you
or
did
they
this to
both be
here, you
extremely
just have to
narrow.
build a new driveway and then that driveway could then access lot 4.
yeah, but then you would have, but then lot 4 would be. a flag lot.
Right, but it's all about the frontage. See what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is if you still made this right, or you did this to here, now this is your connection point to here. Would that eliminate your flag lot issue, Charles? Because it's
Well,
connected to the frontage?
So I think regardless of whether we create a flag lot out of lot 6 or lot 4, or find some way to not technically meet the definition of a flag lot, the issue is we have a non-compliant property in lot 4 now that in any way you dice it up is going to make it further out of compliance. And so the UDO says we should be moving in one direction, and this request takes the property in a different direction. And so based on that, regardless of exactly where the lines are drawn, staff would have to recommend denial because that's not what the zoning ordinance or the subdivision ordinance says is supposed to be occurring on these properties.
well, based on the discussion of our town attorney, variances can be granted for frontages and items like that, but a variance cannot be granted for something that's prohibited.
That's my
So
opinion.
whether we rearrange this or that, as long as it's a flag lot, it's prohibited, and we can't issue a variance on a prohibited item.
But can we approve the plat without approving the subdivision waiver? 'Cause it seemed like the subdivision waiver had to do with the flag.
You can't approve the plat because it doesn't comply with all of the ordinance requirements.
I understand that variances for width, setback, house setback and all, but those are allowed variances. This is prohibited. A flag lot is prohibited by the UDO.
So if we can't approve it, why is it on the agenda?
Because plat applications must be acted on, approved, denied, or approved with conditions by the statute. It's,
It's up to the commission to decide, not the staff taking the application.
that's correct.
Okay.
Well,
Any
it-
residential replat requires notice and a public hearing.
Public hearing. Okay.
So you will need to open the public hearing at some point.
Okay. All right. So we've heard from the applicant and all, so now we will Unless there are any other questions, we'll open this.
I got one. So what's the process for getting a cul-de-sac created for the applicant if they chose to do that? Like, is that something, so saying it's a flag lot? If their private drive was then created as a easement to a public accessed cul-de-sac road that connected straight to this proposed lot, is that a feasible thing for the applicant to consider? Where then what I'm saying is lot 4, however you decided to carve it up, could connect to that public street at that point.
Well, the public,
But-
there's a big difference between the cost to put in a driveway and a cost to construct a public street. Big difference.
Oh, I understand, but we were talking about
Yes, so
like
I
giving
think-
whatever options.
I
are.
think if it were a public street that had a cul-de-sac at the end that met the city's requirements, it likely would comply.
No. So again, the issue that we would have is that you're dealing with a smaller lot width already than is required by the ordinance. Then you go and you dedicate 60 feet of that as right of way. Now you have a lot, whether that lot fronts a new cul-de-sac or fronts Collins, both the width and the depth requirement for any new lot that is created is 250 feet. And so because there's not,
It makes it more non-conforming.
it makes it non-conforming no matter how you slice it up.
Right, but then they could request a variance, or then they could do that then because there's no longer an issue with the flag part.
So
That would no longer be 100% prohibited, correct?
But remember, variances are extremely difficult to get as
Right.
well.
yeah, and you still have the same issue. It's a financial hardship that has nothing to do with anything unique to the land. So we'd be having a similar conversation with the Board of Adjustment about how this does not meet their criteria for granting a variance.
I'm just, in my head, I'm just keep trying to think about the homes that are on East Fork that all share these caliche rock driveways that go
Right.
5 acres back.
So those were created well before, they were not non-conforming at the time that they were done. You know, the town evolves and ordinances evolve. And for the most part, most ordinances say that residential homes that are made that don't conform to the requirements are not non-conforming, they're lawful. So first, residential homes are treated very differently with regard to code updates. That is, unless someone does something that then causes it to become non-conforming in a different way. So if they wanted to sell this house and leave lot 4 as it is, they could do that. But what they're doing is asking for, technically, we want to have the room to put something else on another lot that's even more non-conforming. I mean, this is a difficult situation with a family that wants to be able to have a family member buy a house without having to buy a whole lot because of the cost of acquiring the entire lot. There's no other reason for this request.
Well, I think there should just still be options explored with this being a longtime family of Sunnyvale, and we're not talking about building a new house. And this is an existing house on existing land with an existing family. I understand that there are requirements and that once you touch something, you have to bring it to code, right? But I mean, I was thinking along the same line as Mr. Mays and thinking that if the existing driveway were turned into some type of road, that, and then you actually would create 4, 5, and 6 lots that would basically be cutting the big chunk in half. and access 4, 5, and 6 from the road going through the middle or cul-de-sac as Mr. Mays suggested. I mean, that would be,
Well, at that point, you would probably rezone the property for smaller size lots.
well, they would still be each over 2 acres.
Yeah,
But that's really not something we can do here tonight.
yeah, it's
I mean,
speculation.
Right, I
right-
understand. I just
right.
wanted, if we're going to
But,
deny
yeah.
it, I wanted to leave the applicant with,
Well, and then the
Some
applicant also
thoughts,
asked what other options should we consider? So you're trying to give people.
But I see this currently as a legally non-conforming lot. That's what I learned, the terminology I learned. So anything we do to it is going to create 2 illegal lots, essentially. I mean, we're creating more problems by dividing it. And I know this isn't a family and all those things, but I've learned a long time ago that, you can have all the intents in the world to keep something in the family, but somebody, for whatever reason, decides to make a change, and then you have additional problems.
Okay, any other questions?
So as lot 4 exists today, it's considered lawful.
Yes,
Okay.
it is a lawful lot.
Okay.
But it does not conform
Conform to the
to
new
current requirements.
Or-
That's correct.
Okay.
But it's lawful.
It's lawful.
Yes.
Thank you.
So
I'm sorry.
hang on one second.
You-
So you opened the public hearing
Yes.
and you haven't closed it.
No, I haven't had a chance to open it
Oh,
yet
okay.
because
He's
everybody
about
kept
to open the
discussing.
public hearing and you can
So
talk.
I wanted to make sure everybody is good for now. So let's open this to the public. Have a public hearing. The public can come forward and discuss this item on Zoom or in town hall. Anybody wishing to discuss this, please come forward. First off, do we have anybody on Zoom online? Please. While you're doing that, I guess we can. Okay, no one online, and we can check back again, but go ahead. Please state your name and your address again.
Wallace, 748 Arbor Creek, DeSoto. Also, on the map that was shown, I do want you to realize there is a huge pond in
Mhm.
that area that's not shown. It's all
Right.
just shown as land, which it's supposed to. But the driveway, we keep talking about a house being here or there. And I realize we won't be there forever, but the driveway on the driving in on the right side of the driveway, it dips down and then you're in the pond. So there would be no place unless a developer came in after we're all dead and gone to develop that. There's just no space for it. Lot 4 at the back is in a floodplain with the new development from the side of us. When it rains, it's like a river comes through there. So that's just not feasible that that would ever happen either. So I just wanted to make you aware. I wasn't sure if you knew exactly where the property was. And because that pond is there, when you're driving on Collins, you see the existing home over there that's been there since, the early 80s. So, the flag thing it's just not your typical flag property is what I'm saying. And I know that it's not, it's where you don't grant it, but I also know that you also have the ability to override that. So, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? State your name and address again, please.
Jason LeBorn. My address is dependent on this. So right now I am not living anywhere in Sunnyvale. I'm with my parents until we can figure this out.
So yeah, just state your address.
10 Nunsuch Road, Dallas, Texas, 75214. Okay, a few questions. Is lot 3 a flag lot? As you look at it, is that a flag lot? Because it's less than 250 feet wide and the property extends behind another property. So this is something that's already been approved as a replat as recent as last year.
Lot 3? No. Can,
Are you asking me to render a legal opinion right this second?
Well, no.
I mean, I'd
just
have to-
based
I'd
on
have to
the
take a look at it.
definitions of-
I'd have to take a look at it.
just as we've defined it, it seems to be a flag lot. Because although it doesn't meet the minimum requirement of 250 feet, it does extend behind another property.
right, but it's 190, I can't read that, but it's not 24 feet wide,
Okay,
extending several hundred feet to a larger square.
Right.
Or
okay.
the rest of the property.
So, but that's my question, just if it's a flag lot, or if we are determining it based on the width, which I understand if that's the case, if it's prohibited because it's 24 feet extending that length, I understand, but my understanding is that the legal counsel is flag lots are prohibited. But it seems as if flag lots are not always prohibited based on the definition of a flag lot being behind another property and less than 250 feet. Currently, we said lot 4 is in compliance, I guess because it was in compliance in the past, but lot 5 is a fairly new lot that's been approved. And that in itself, when it was approved, to me, it created a flag lot with lot 4, if you take lot 6 out. So we have 2 flag lots based on my understanding of the definition, possibly 3, because lot 1 goes behind a neighbor. So it looks like there are several flag lots on the property. Although I just wanted to ask that and point that out, although I do understand what Mr. Klein is saying, that one of them extends 24 feet. I didn't know that we were defining it by a certain amount, a certain width. So my other question would be, I know we've talked about the intent and we're not hiding the intent. But you mentioned that the intent would be to avoid paying for it. However, if Charles mentioned that lot 4 is buildable, although I know it would take some variances, but if there is a small spot that's buildable, I don't think that we necessarily should look at it and say this is only due to financial hardship, because if it's possibly buildable in the future, that lot 4 could have a home built on it in the front closer to Collins, then I think that ought to be considered, that we're not creating lots that you cannot build on. If we say that although it takes a variance, you can build on lot 4, I think that that should be considered as well. And then my only other thing to add that we would really appreciate that y'all would consider is Mrs. Bradford asked why we were even talking about this and why this is on the agenda. And really, we've had great conversations. Charles has been awesome. And I've been working on this really since the summer with him. But this was based on guidance from the town staff on what to do. So we are here because these were the steps that we were told to take. And although it was never guaranteed, this is why we are here submitting this waiver to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it was because we went through everything and we were advised to submit the waiver. We submitted the waiver, and so that's what.
I certainly understand that, and staff oftentimes, I mean, I'm not a part of those conversations, so I can only deal with it as it gets to here.
No, I understand, but those are the steps that we've taken. And
Sure.
based on the advice that we were given, but I understand. And you were not in on that. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else wishing to speak? Anybody online? All right, as we have no more wishing to speak, we will close the public hearing portion of this agenda item. Yeah, the shape of the lots, a lot of it is due to the landforms. I guess lot three includes most of that lake, the pond, and that's why it tapers down. It includes that pond. And there's the house in lot 5. It's recently been built. And 4, before 6 was carved out. Had some variances, but it was still a reasonably shaped lot. I understand the trying to get a handle on what a flag lot is, but I don't know, it's difficult with the trying to draw lines around landforms and include structures and all.
I just feel like these are, I think a lot of this is the special circumstances that should be considered, although I mean, I understand the negatives. I think there's equally positives involved. And I'd just like to clarify my comments about why are we speaking about this was just because, and it's probably because I misunderstood something the attorney said, but I was under the impression that we're not allowed to approve this tonight. So that's why I was asking, why are we continuing to discuss it if we're not allowed to approve it? That was the basis of my question there. So,
My only task as the city attorney is to read your ordinances and give you advice, legal advice. Sometimes my clients take my legal advice, sometimes they don't. I don't get all riled up either way. My job is to give you the advice.
Okay.
I do still see this as the applicant indicated, this is a self-imposed hardship. And I don't really see the special circumstances. I appreciate your explanation, but if you read the rest of it, it says special circumstances that would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of their land if the provisions of the UDO are applied. And right now, the land is perfectly usable as it is. It's a legal, non-conforming lot that's perfectly usable in its current form. So I don't see that there's any special circumstances.
Questions or comments?
Did you want to close the public hearing?
Yeah, I thought I did. So
Okay.
just to be sure it's closed. Okay, we'll close the public hearing, seeing no one else wishing to speak. More comments or recommendations or motions?
I would just like to add, you know, I'm empathetic to your situation, man. I truly am. And I get what y'all are trying to do, but like my colleague said about the financial hardship and burden of buying a lot, I'm pretty sure I remember when we did the replats on this and when they did the nice little square of lot 5 for the other family member, when that was carved out, I'm assuming that that's the problem with that lot being carved out first, and then it creates that necessary, you know, problem on you guys. But I have to agree with James, Mr. Golder, that I don't think it's a fair situation. I don't think that the creation of lot 5 to justify that it made the other lot a flag lot, whereas in hindsight, the argument was made at that point, I believe, to create lot 5 so that the family could get use out of that land and make something at that time too. The same as creating the other lots you referenced on lot 3, 2, and 1 when they did that. And that those roads and driveways clearly access Beltline directly right off there. So while I want to be there with you, the argument that chopping it all up created all these flag lots when all of those choppings up was done to create a financial win, make that family who's owned that land for all that time, let everybody get a piece. But that's just kind of where I'm standing on it.
I agree with Mr. Mays. I mean, I understand looking at it, trying to figure out a way to make it work. I'm sure that the staff and the family has gone through the different options. Putting a road in would be, well, I'm not gonna say it's entirely too expensive. It could help solve the problem, but if there's an issue about buying the rest of the property, I don't think you're gonna want to invest in putting a road in there and changing all of that. And then also the future use or what may happen in the future. Then they'll create, because with lot 4, we're creating multiple flag lots at that point there. So unfortunately, I'd like to make the motion to deny the request for the approval of the residential replat.
I'll second that motion.
So, and it's a rec.
Yes, do we?
You make a recommendation to deny. You also need to state the section of the ordinance that it doesn't comply with. Based on the motion, that would be section 2.05.07D.
D is in Delta?
D is in Delta.
Okay, thank you.
I'll amend my motion to deny as it applies to section 2.05.07 D as in Delta .1 for the town of Sunnyvale UDO.
I'll second that motion.
We have a second, and all those in favor of denial, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, all those opposed. We have 5 in favor, 1 opposed, and 1 abstain. Okay, motion passes 5 to 1 to 1 abstention. And might I add that in cases like this, working with the town does their best faith effort in working with individuals to try to make things work and with the best of their ability, but they are not, it is not their final determination. It resides with the commission, the Plan and Zoning Commission. So thank the town staff for working diligently on this, but unfortunately it's been denied. All right, that's all the items on our agenda tonight. Correct. That is it. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move that we adjourn.
7:08, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded, all in favor? It's unanimous. Tonight's meeting is adjourned, 7:08 PM.